Dark Souls 3's boss roster was generational for its time and holds up extremely well even today. I revisited the game to rank the bosses worst to best in a tier list. This is not an objective ranking, just a passionate fan of the game's opinion. Let's get into it. Kicking off our bottom tier is the Ancient Wyvern. This is just an obstacle course that is disguised as a boss fight, and it's not very fun. After running past the Wyvern at a bunch of fuck-ass annoying enemies like this dude, you'll end up above the Wyvern where you attempt a plunging attack into his head. But don't you worry, you will miss that attack the first time. It's just one of those Souls player experiences we all go through. Yeah, I hate this thing, so dead last. Half-Light Fear of the Church is intended to be fought as a PvP boss fight. A player will be summoned in as the boss, and something you will always hear Souls players say, "Great idea, bad execution." Nope, it's not. Mixing PvP and PvE for a boss fight is dumb as hell and never works. Someone explain to me what makes that such a good idea. Anyway, the PvE version, when played offline, is an awkward NPC fight, and those are always terrible. Yeah, D tier. High Lord Wolnir is also very bad. His design is very cool. He looks like a Zelda boss with a From Software art style. Unfortunately, he is more of a gimmick boss. You'll hit his obvious weak points, the gold bracelets on his arms, until he goes down. That's tedious and not very fun, but doesn't put him D tier on its own. The reason he ends up this low is because of his breath attack that fans call his Vape Cloud. His breath causes a rapid curse buildup, so if you're too close to him in it, well, time to respawn and run all the way back here. Wolnir is half easy and boring, and another half bullshit random RNG fuckery that kills you instantly. Awful. Let's hurry up with these D tier bosses because I really don't like shit talking this game. I love Dark Souls 3, so let's continue. The Cursed Heart of Greatwood is a giant ass gross ass tree who, much like High Lord Wolnir, has weak points you'll have to hit to damage him. The sacks are found throughout his body and it's easy enough to walk away at them. Once you do enough damage, they will explode, dealing huge damage. Halfway through the fight, he breaks the floor and you fight in an area below. It's an easy fight with nothing unfair going on, so the fact he's easy actually does make him better than the other D tier bosses. Oh, and Ballsack. There you go. I said it. So funny, right? Grow up, man. So now we start the C tier. These are the bosses of Dark Souls 3 I find mediocre or just forgettable. Champions Gravetender and Gravetender Greatwolf are a boss fight I can't bring myself to have any strong opinions on. I placed them this low because I have no bad memories associated with them, but truthfully I never do this fight these days. Even back when this was the current, I guess you'd say, Souls game, I never felt much incentive to do the fight, so they place at the lower end of C tier. Very similar to that is the Old Demon King. He's the game's most forgotten boss because he has no incentive to fight either. He's not a boss I particularly enjoy, and because he's optional with no real incentive to fight, as I said, I've done this boss the least by far. But it's justified. I'm gonna place him in the C tier. The Crystal Stage is one of the many failed Sorcerer bosses that From Software have made over the years. I get it, Sorcerers attack with range, and it's the game most players use a big sword and fight in melee. Players want a wizard boss for the fantasy setting, but the ideas are a bit at odds with each other. It's tough, so while I sympathize with the problem with gameplay, he's just also boring in his design and presentation. He'll place at number 19. The Deacons of the Deep are followers of Aldrich. There are a ton of them, so you have to attack the glowing deacon to damage the health bar, and eventually end the encounter. I actually rank this boss higher than the other C tier bosses because while it is a boring boss, equipping an ultra great sword and mowing the deacons down is funny. Is that a dumb reason? Yes, but I'm dumb, and it's my list. Number 18. Let's move on to the B tier of Dark Souls 3 bosses. Keep in mind, everything going forward is good, and I would like to ask if you've enjoyed this video to please like it and consider subscribing for my future content. But let's continue to the B tier. Remember when I said the Ancient Wyvern was an obstacle course disguised as a boss? Well, Yorm the Giant to me is a movie disguised as a boss. Luckily, that movie is really good. Yorm has a ton of health, so you're meant to take him down much faster with the Storm Ruler. It makes him a gimmick boss, and one that goes down too fast at that. But at the end of the day, video games are supposed to be art, and as a total experience, Yorm is great. You can't tell me you don't get chills charging into battle with Seaboard either. Osiris the Consumed King is a boss that gets a lot of hate at worst, and at best he's seen as about average. I'm more in the camp that he's average. Combat-wise, there's not a lot to know other than the charge attack that hits like a freight train. His flying breath attack is pretty cool looking but not hard to avoid, and I think the thing that stands out the most about the Consumed King is he does not shut up. But I actually love that. We need more bosses that yap like this and talk. I think it adds to the fight a lot. Vort of the Boreal Valley is the first true boss of Dark Souls 3. It was the boss that made me realize how much cleaner Dark Souls 3's multi-directional dodging felt compared to the previous games. Vort's charge attack never would have worked in the earlier games, and dodging through those and hugging his backside to avoid his hammer swings makes for a very smooth feeling fight. These days it's hard to imagine I ever died to this guy even once in 2016, but the nostalgia and memories I have tied to his fight carry him to a 15th place ranking. Aldrich is one of the Lords of Cinder who has flat out bone-chilling lore. You see, this man loves eating people. Can't get enough of it, even during the boss fight itself, because in case you somehow didn't know by now, he's the sludge on the bottom of the boss and is devouring Darksong Gwendolyn from Dark Souls 1, and using his powers for the boss fight. He swings his staff at you and sends magical projectiles at you throughout the fight, but his signature attack is when he fires his magical bow into the air, sending a rain of arrows down that follow you. Back in the day, I felt like this was one of the most unfair attacks of all time. But coming back to it now, I mostly just get hit by his AoE when he teleports throughout the fight. But Aldrich boils down to is amazing storytelling and lore with solid gameplay that doesn't hold his placement back. But topping the B tier and just missing out on the A tier is Iodex Gundyr. Tutorial bosses are always hard to rank, so I'll tell you how I do it. It comes down to two things. Did the tutorial boss communicate the boss's mechanics well enough, and did they make me excited to play the rest of the game? He knocked both these out of the park, and compared to other tutorial bosses, he's easily my favorite From Software has made yet. I like him so much that I was tempted to go with a hot take and put him in the A tier, but I just can't justify ever having a tutorial boss that high when they never have any replay value. But he does top the B tier. And now we have arrived at the A tier for the amazing bosses that fall just short of the top tier in the S tier. The A and S tier I'm going to spend a lot more time on because this boss roster is seriously just so good. I want to spend more time singing its praises than insulting the ones that I don't like. So let's get into the A tier. The Dragonslayer armor is a giant suit of armor wielding a huge lightning axe and enormous shield. First off, the fight takes place on a bridge, and if you watch my channel you always know I say, bridge fights are automatically cooler, and this one gets high marks. The butterflies that fly at you make it feel like you're fighting above some kind of chaotic, almost battlefield sort of thing. Even if you really aren't, it's a nice touch. Two things the dragon armor has that I appreciate are his delay attacks forcing you to be patient, because, keep in mind, this was before From Software fell in love with them in Elden Ring. It was still a pretty unique thing at the time. And this could be more of a personal thing, but I like that he has a shield and actually uses it to defend himself. I feel like so many bosses just have a shield that they use as another weapon. So even if he turtles a lot sometimes, I think it's a good thing. Top to bottom, it's a great fight. Speaking of an excellent fight top to bottom, next is Champion Gundyr, who is scaled up with a late game health bar and damage. He's more aggressive than the original tutorial fight off the bat, but it's phase 2, he locks in and his eyes turn red, and the aggression really ramps up. It's a sort of Souls fight where you feel like you're surviving more than winning, and I mean that as a compliment. I always love fights like that, and you can't find many bosses that do that like Gundyr does in the older games. What holds Gundyr and also the Dragonslayer armor back is I think both of them are fun bosses with great movesets, but I don't think there's a standout or signature moment or thing going on that could really just place them higher up into the S tier. Still though, those are both great fights. Coming in at number 10 is the Nameless King. The Nameless King is a great boss I do still love, but a lot of what made him great hasn't aged the best. And what do I mean by that? If you weren't aware, when Dark Souls 3 was originally out before the DLC releases, the Nameless King was considered by a lot of people as the hardest Souls boss to date. In hindsight, Orphan of Kos was definitely harder, but as someone who had not played Bloodborne yet, I bought into the hype completely. And you know what? It was not hype. Back then, this boss was hard. This is going to be a bit of a recurring theme going forward, so let me explain. Dark Souls 3 is still a great game, don't get me wrong. It just is not held up in the difficulty department, and that's something I do count against bosses when we're talking about rankings. After we all got better from Elden Ring and Shadow of the Erdtree, going back to some of these just don't hold up. But Nameless does do a few things that absolutely will stand the test of time. Shad Aura, check. Amazing lore and story reveals, check. OST, okay, maybe not that one either. Not gonna lie, I don't really like that one. I love fighting Nameless to this day, and he ranked this high for that reason. I just can't say he's held up as well as some of the other bosses when a big reason he was so fun was because of the degree of difficulty, but that's just me. And topping the A tier is the Abyss Watchers. This boss is held up much better than the rest of these A tier bosses for one big reason. You know how I keep harping on the difficulty? Well, the Abyss Watchers never had to hold up in difficulty. They were always an easy boss. That may keep them out of the S tier, but everything else going on is fantastic. The Abyss Watchers are just awesome, and I swear I remember fighting these guys for the first time like it was yesterday. You may have noticed I get pretty annoyed at Souls fans repeating the same tired takes like a bunch of sheep, but when they bring up stuff like seeing the Abyss Watchers come out of the ground and helping you, it was completely mind-blowing to see this the first time, and that's the kind of stuff I will never forget. So in this case, I totally get it. It's more of an exciting moment than a real challenge though, and that's okay, because Phase 2 is a solid early game skill check with a flashy, cool-ass moves to fight against. Dude, I love the Abyss Watchers, and I have to give them a ton of credit for getting me hooked on this game. They really do kind of carry Dark Souls 3 early game when you think about it. An amazing boss. And now we are at the S tier, the truly legendary fights of Dark Souls 3, and it is the largest tier. And I know 8 S tier fights seems like a lot, but that's just how good this boss roster is. But will we have any S plus placements for my own personal Hall of Fame? Keep watching to find out. The Dancer of the Boreal Valley has aged like fine wine. The Dancer is found at the High Wall of Lothric. She can be fought earlier if you're a Chad, but she's meant to be fought after you've killed the Lords of Cinders. Her story is simple. She was forced by Pontiff Sullivan to be his dancer, and later one of his Outrider Knights. While the room catches fire, the dancer attacks you with 2 blades as well as a dangerous grab attack with a pretty creepy audio tell to go along with the visual one of her body moving side to side. After taking enough damage, she'll bring fire and magic to her blades and goes after you like a tornado in her whirlwind attack. But running away will make you be perfectly fine. All the while, the room is catching more fire and the music swells with more intensity as she loses health as the fight goes on. It's an unreal touch that adds so much intensity to an already intense fight. Since we're starting off the S tier, I do want to reiterate what I said earlier. Dark Souls 3, the total package, has held up beautifully, but one thing has not is difficulty. Back in 2016, the Dancer had me wanting to claw my own eyes out. She was easily the biggest hurdle for me on my first playthrough. Her ghostly movements and weird timings of her standard sword attacks would drive me insane, and she was still decently hard well after that. Even today, the Dancer can still give me a run for my money all these years later. But now I've come to love those graceful and hard to read attacks. She moves so much more differently than other huge beast type enemies, and I could be playing this game in the year 3000 that would still throw me off. The Dancer's fantastic OST and setting would already be placing her high, and her feeling different than other bosses placed her lower years ago. Even if this is a quality ranking, the fact her difficulty does hold up so well when other bosses haven't at all is a huge positive for me. That X factor pushes her to the S tier, even ahead of some of the more famous fights like the Nameless King. Next up we have Pontiff Sullivan, and this entrance is amazing. As you walk into the church, he is standing completely still. This is what kids today keep saying is ore farming. He's just patiently waiting for you, weapons ready, and as you get closer, they light up with magic and fire, and once you're closer, he'll attack, beginning a legendary battle. His combos are unbelievable for Dark Souls 3. They feel like they never end, and dodging them feels awesome. To begin phase 2, he summons a clone, but it's not really a gank at all. The clone will do the same attacks as Pontiff Sullivan, but just a few seconds before. Magic and ranged attacks are now part of the equation, including an attack where he'll fly in the air and land at you with an explosion that is so damn cool. This whole phase 2 is a huge step up in difficulty to everything you've done to this point, making him the skill check of Dark Souls 3. But he's also still very replayable and keeps his challenge. There's no mechanics for learning a new game like, say, Genichiro Ashina and Sekiro, just a lot of get good. And for his story, Lord is huge here, because Pontiff Sullivan's influence is everywhere. Basically everything bad that's going on in Lothric is because of him, and he is the main villain of this story. From Software has made characters and bosses based off mythology before, and a little known fact is Miyazaki was inspired by Ronald Reagan's influence on the United States of America when he created Pontiff Sullivan's lore. Sullivan is a boss that is challenging and memorable in all the best ways, placing him among the S tier on the list. And coming in at number 6 we have the Twin Princes. My god, what a fight. Twin princes are Prince Lothric and Prince Lorien. Lothric was born cursed. He was sickly and frail like we see in the boss fight. He was the one destined to become a Lord of Cinder by linking the First Flame. His brother was one badass knight who killed the Demon Prince alone. Despite being such a legendary warrior, Lorien chose to share in his brother's curse willingly and it crippled his legs. Together they were enough to link the First Flame. From Software usually leaves some lore up to interpretation, and I believe that Lorien willingly did this because he would take his curse from his brother, but it failed. But when the time came to link the First Flame, the Twin Princes refused the call, choosing instead to watch the fire fade from a distance, setting the game's events in motion. Awesome story, huh? As someone close with my brothers, it really resonates with me. Does the gameplay hold up its end of the bargain? Well, dear viewer, it absolutely does. In Phase 1, you fight Lorien. He attacks you with his greatsword while Lothric will teleport him around the arena, sometimes far away where he will unleash this devastating beam at you, but more often he will be right next to you. It's an extremely intense fight, but bringing Lorien down is just only the half of the battle. During an amazing cutscene, Lothric revives his brother and gets onto his back to help him in the fight for Phase 2. Lothric attacks with magic projectiles while Lorien plays the same as he does in Phase 1. Each prince has their own health bar, but when Lorien goes down, Lothric will raise him back up with less health. Seeing this the first time blew me away. Killing Lothric is what will finally finish this encounter, and when you do, the music will swell, and you get a quote and moment that gives me chills every time. The boss is sensational. Its presentation, soundtrack, and lore, just everything. I have nothing bad to say here. If there's one fight I would show to someone to try and get them to play Dark Souls 3, it's this fight. Dark Eater Midir is incredible and a masterclass in From Software's fair difficulty. Midir starts off as an environmental hazard and then a mini-boss of sorts, and that part is great for what it is. What we're talking about here is the optional boss fight. After going through a somewhat hidden area, you'll drop into this gorgeous cave arena, walk towards Midir, who gets up and lets out a roar, and the fight begins. Let's get the obvious out of the way. Everyone that's ever heard of Dark Eater Midir knows that hitting him in the head is what makes this boss work. If you did start playing these games more recently, You've probably seen people bring this up ad nauseum like it's groundbreaking analysis. The reason is Midir was what we had waited for since the genre started, and we finally got a great dragon boss. Dark Souls 1 had Kalameet, which was okay, but the genre had nothing else to speak of. Most of the fights were pretty horrible, and that's until Midir, where hitting the head fixed everything and gave us something truly special. So I do usually get annoyed at this fanbase parroting the same things they hear other people say. This one's coming from understandable and justified excitement. Midir is a long ass fight. His health bar is enormous and he hits hard. But what makes Midir so fair and fun to fight is what balances that out. It's how clear and obvious every attack is that comes at you. If you got hit, it's always your fault in this one. If he lowers himself, he's ready for a charge at you. The claw swipes you just have to dodge through. Some of the fire attacks can be trouble, in particular the one when he flies. I've seen people not realizing it comes out at a diagonally, like an angle, so I have to get to the other side of it. If there's one thing that does hold back Midir, it's again, difficulty. Similar to the Nameless King, part of the appeal of fighting him back when the game came out was solely because of just how hard he was. Back then, the only bosses on his level were in this game in the same DLC, the Nameless King and Orphan of Kos, really. So since then, From Software has continued to come up with more insane bosses. He has lost that as his calling card, but the fight is still fantastic. Midir feels as fun to fight as a humanoid enemy, but with the incredible visuals and spectacle that come with so many of the big monster enemies that From Software has made. Sister Fried is one of the few bosses in Dark Souls 3 that can still push me even after all these years. For me, Fried has never really lost her edge, and I can't say that about any boss on this list but her. The first time I fought her is one of my clearest memories from the DLC. I finished Phase 2 pretty happy with the fight after getting that Titanite slab, but then I saw her slowly stand back up with the black flame and scythe in her hand, and my brain just shut off. I can't say enough how shocking this was the first time it happened. Giving you a Titanite slab to fake you out might be Miyazaki's finest troll to date, and the dude lives under a bridge. Phase 1 is simple, but I actually like it that way. You get an easy warm-up. She's very fast for a Dark Souls boss, but the only thing to worry about is when she disappears and you have to find her before she impales you for huge damage. Phase 2 is one of the better gank fights From Software has ever made. Father Ariandel's loud and wild, smashing the entire arena apart and even breathing fire at you, while Fried is more passive here. They complement each other very well. But Phase 3 is outrageous. I still get adrenaline whenever she leaps at you with black flame to start it off, and it's tough. She is fast and aggressive and will put you on your heels, all while your Estus is probably pretty low from fighting through 2 whole phases before this. Every time I come back to Dark Souls 3, Fried is the one boss I actually plan to be dying at for a little bit. There's nothing I'd change about this fight, and the way it escalates is perfect, and somehow the challenge is still there. Slave Knight Gale comes in at number 3, and I know a lot of people will be surprised by this one. To be clear, I love this boss and it's in S tier and it's high for a reason, but the amount of hyperbole that Gale gets thrown his way has me in an odd spot where I'm going to sound more negative than I'd like. Slave Knight Gale is not the best boss in gaming history in 2026. In 2017, when The Ring City was released, and for a good time after, Gale deserved every bit of hype he got. But as time has gone on, better bosses have come out, and if you disagree, go back and play it. You'll be shocked at how much better we've gotten to trivialize its difficulty and how the spectacle of it has aged from the game being nearly 10 years old now. If the ranking was done then, he'd be number 1, but the 2 following bosses have something about them that makes them timeless, whereas Gale, I can't say that about. After his iconic intro, you fight Gale at the end of the world. It's just a land of endless ashes. Gale fights in Phase 1 like a wild animal. He swings his greatsword at you wildly, and his plunging stab attack is very fun to dodge. One thing I appreciate about Gale is how easy it is to stagger him. It's something you can take advantage of a lot in Phase 1, but Phase 2, Gale becomes much more dangerous. He stands upright now and has his magic disc attack and crossbow, and most notably his cape. The cape follows his sword, and there are sometimes I'll get hit by this when I swear I shouldn't have. It can be a bit bullshit at times, but overall it's a solid addition and that's something to think about. And when the lightning strike starts coming from the sky, things get really intense, and everything about it is just peak. Some of my issues come from, well, a lot of things that aren't Gale's fault. Gale regularly tossed lists as the best boss in gaming history or Souls games years after his release. His lore has been memed into oblivion, and it makes me really sick of hearing about it because it comes across as dishonest to me. If you actually replay these games, you'll see From Software has continued to improve at what they do in the years since, but yet I still hear people talking about Gale like he's better than Sekiro and Elden Ring bosses when it's just not the case. So even when he doesn't hit that timeless mark that the next bosses do, the spectacle of the battle keeps him firmly S tier. He may not be the absolute pinnacle of gaming anymore like people still say he is, but he's still one of the greats. The Demon Prince was number 1 the first time I did this video. That video is bad, don't go watch it. But a lot of this comes down to how the fight looks moment to moment. The boss has some of the best visuals in the entire genre, and that's the sort of thing that never wears off no matter how well you know the moveset. The Demon Prince's attacks are so flashy and so well done, they're still exciting even when you've seen them 100 times. Phase 1 with Demon in Pain and Demon from Below is a great example of how to do a gank fight without it turning into a total mess. One demon pressures you up close while the other fires poisonous ranged attacks from the back, and that pairing makes the fight feel active instead of annoying. Early on I used to think through which prince I wanted for Phase 2, but these days I just killed him and let it play out. And Phase 2 is just unbelievable. The Demon Prince is some of the best attack animations in the entire game. Everything looks so damn cool and the whole fight feels fresh even all these years later. The Demon Prince is the perfect mix of spectacle and gameplay, and the one fight in Dark Souls 3 that still feels exciting to me every single time. That's why he comes in at number 2. It can be hard to describe why I love a boss like the Demon Prince so much other than it's just unreal looking and fun to play. But with our number 1 boss, I can tell you exactly why it means so much, and that is the Soul of Cinder, the final boss of Dark Souls 3. He is found at the Kiln of the First Flame. You're teleported there by the Firekeeper after bringing the ashes of the Lords of Cinders to their throne. First off, that design is one of the most awesome I've ever seen, and the arena is my favorite in the series, because not only does it look awesome, but it's also because you're surrounded by the coiled swords of those who previously linked the First Flame before you. Soul of Cinder attacks you with a greatsword to start off, but throughout the fight, he changes weapons and fighting styles frequently. Why? This guy is everyone who has linked the First Flame combined into one crazy powerful being, and he's coming at you with all of their fighting styles. It's a nice gimmick, and I find all of them pretty fair, the Greatsword being the best, and the Spear one being the worst. He is aggressive for a Dark Souls 3 boss and will have you on your heels, but Phase 2 is even better. He takes on the fighting style of Gwyn, yes, Gwyn from Dark Souls 1, and From Software uses his soundtrack from the first game as part of the Soul of Cinders. It's such a powerful callback to the first game, and further proof the goobers who cry about fan service in Dark Souls 3 should have never been let out of the lockers they got stuffed in high school. Shut up! Why would you not like a cool callback to a game you loved and played previously? Soul Cinder was never that challenging for a final boss in the first place, which is part of the reason why he's aged so well. He's remembered for his awesome callbacks to Dark Souls 1 and being a fun fight overall. When you look at everything this fight has between the setting and the finale built around Gwyn's theme, it lands as a true grand finale for the Dark Souls trilogy. He's memorable because he ties the series back to the beginning while still being fun, and as an ending to Dark Souls 3, he delivers exactly what he needs to. And that's why he's my favorite boss in Dark Souls 3 and the one that stood the test of time the best. I love you guys. If you want to check out another video, there's some on the screen now. See you in the next one.